Well, good morning. This is Miss Billerback, and I hope this finds you well. So today we're going to look at section 11.2, more properties of inequalities. So for any two numbers, A and B, A can either be less than B, A can equal B, or A is greater than B. Well, you're probably like, oh, Miss Billerbeck, these letters again. Could you please make it so we can understand? So here we go. So A is less than B. Okay. And let's say this is, I guess I should have checked my letters. Whoops, that one's not equal. A equals B. Let's pretend this was A. Okay, so A equals, whoops, there we go. A equals B. There we go. Now I've got it together. And then we have A is greater than B. So there we have it. A is greater than B. So we have two cases. So we have A can either be less than B, A can equal B, or A can be greater than B. Okay, those are our cases. All right, now let's look at this. All right, so if A is less than B and B is less than C, then that means A is less than C. Okay, let's do that again. If A is less than B, see that they're definitely, let's see, now you can see they're definitely different sizes. And then B is less than C, then that means A is less than C. Okay, that's what those letters mean. All right. So if we have A is less than, let's make this one C. Okay, A is less than B. And then we know these two are equal. If we add this and this side, let me swap these oranges. This side is still less than this side, okay? So without these two, A is less than C. Okay, but as soon as we roll in the equal ones, A plus K is still going to be, this is still going to be less than K plus C. All right. All right, then we have, if A is less than B and K is greater than 0, which means it's positive, then K times A equals, is going to be less than K times B. So I got some little blocks from my childhood out. Okay, I was a child one time. All right, so this little block is less than this little block. Okay. Now, if I have two of those and two of those, this is still going to be less than this one, right? And then if I have three of those and three of those, this side's still less than this side, right? So that's all these little letters mean. Okay, so Now you know. My favorite little blocks when I was a kid. All right. If A is less than B and K is less than 0, that means negative. Then KA is greater than KB. Now I couldn't figure out a nice handy, aid like an orange or a block for this one. So let's use actual numbers. So if I have 4 is less than 7, okay, and let's say K is negative 2. So I have negative 2 times 4, and I have negative 2 times 7. So negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. And negative 2 times 7 is negative 14. Now we know whatever's closest to 0 is bigger. So also we know the less we're in debt, the more money we actually, theoretically have. We still don't have it because we're in debt, but we know when we're closer to 0, it's a bigger number. So which one of these is closer to 0? Ooh, this one. So this one is greater. Well, wait a second. We started out with A is less than B. And now it's a greater than sign. Yikes. Well, we multiplied by a negative. In the last lesson, what did I say happens when you multiply or divide by a negative? That's right, you flip the sign. Okay, so whenever we multiply or divide by a negative, you flip that sign. There you go. All right, let's go into some examples. So we have A is less than B, and we add 8 to both sides. So we have A is less than B, and we're adding 8 to both sides. From what we know from the orange thing, so we have A and C that are less than each other, and we add the same amount. Well, this is still going to be less than this side. So we know that this is still going to be less than that. Okay, a quick way to do this is I'm going to teach you something a little ahead. Remember how I said if you wanted to solve this, put it in terms of something you're a little more comfortable with. So let's change this to an equal sign. So let's do A plus 8, and we're just doing this temporarily. B plus 8. How do we move that 8 to the other side? That's right, we use the opposite of a plus 8 would be a minus 8. Okay, so we have A equals B plus, and that's 0. Oh, and this is 0 too. Okay, so now let's go put this sign back in there. So A is less than B, because this is just A and this is just B, and we were just pretending it was equal just so we weren't freaking out and we could solve the problem. Okay, so this was all for pretend. Okay, but we had to put the original inequality back in. And so, yes, A is less than B. And if we add 8 to both sides, it's still A is less than B, or this is less than that. All right, so this time what we're going to do is we're going to be multiplying both sides by 3/4. So we have 3/4 A and 3/4 B. So we have A is less than B. What sign goes here? Well, the rule says if it's K is greater than 1 or 0, which 3/4 is greater than 0, and if we multiply it on both sides, then this is still great. This is still not going to change the inequality. So it's still going to be less than that. Now, if we do that pretend thing and we solve the problem or simplify the problem to one variable and we pretend it's equal for a moment, just so we're not freaking out over an inequality, and we want to get this A by itself, we multiply by that fancy word, that's right, reciprocal. And we do it over here. Well, look, it cancels both of them out. And now we stop pretending and we put the inequality back in, and A is still less than B. Okay? So, all right, let me grab some of these other boards. Okay, so the next one. If A is less than 4, are these inequalities true? So is A less than 5? Well, if we remember, if A is less than 4 and 4 is less than 5, then A has to be less than 5. So true. If A plus 7 is less than 11? So A is less than 4. So 4 plus 7 is 11. So 11 plus would equal 11, but A is less than that. So this would have to be less than 4, so it's always going to be less than 11. So that would be true. All right, A is less than 0. Is A always going to be less than 0? Well, okay, let's look at this number line. So we're using an open point at 4. And A can be everything that's below 4. Can't be 4, so we're using a fence around 4. You can't get to 4. That's why it's open. It's a fence around 4. And then everything down below, it can be. So it can be 0. It can be a few things. Let's see. It can be 3. It can be 2. It can be 1. It could be 0. So this one's not always true. Because right in here, it's actually greater than 0. So that's why it's not always true. It's true here. But this area, it's false. All right, this one, tricky. Negative A, is it less than negative 4? Wow. Remember how I said, let's get A by itself, and if it's a negative, we have to multiply by a negative to get rid of that negative. And when we do that, we multiply both sides by -1. What happens to that sign? That's right, it flips. So we have A is greater than 4. This says A is less than 4. This says A is greater than 4. Oh, This says false. So there you go. So don't forget to flip the sign when you multiply by a negative. So that I'm gonna write that in just so it's burnt into your memory. Flip that sign, flip the sign. When you multiply by a negative or divide by a negative, flip the sign. All right, so example 4, fill in the inequality sign. If A is less than B, then A minus 10 and B minus 10. Well, we're doing the same thing on both sides of the equation, right? So does that change the sign? No. So we're going to put less than. If M is greater than N, then M plus 20 and N plus 20. Well, we're doing the same thing to both sides. So there's no multiplying negatives or anything like that. So it's just going to be the same. Now, if T is less than or equal to W, then 2T times 2W, what do we put in there? Well, we're not multiplying by any negatives, we're only multiplying by positives. So this is where I get to get my favorite blocks out again. This is like this. So if I multiply by 2, and I multiply this side by 2, this is still less than that. There you go. My favorite blocks. Okay, so we're still going to put less than or equal to. If C is greater than D, then negative 1/3 C and negative 1/3 D. Wait a second. There's a negative. It's a negative. So we have to do something. So if C is greater than D, then we flip the sign. We're not going to be fooled. We're flipping that sign. So let's try it out because that was a little hairy, don't you think? So if we have 4 and 7, and then we actually, let's make this much easier. You must be going, Miss Bella, that's too hard. Let's go 3 and 6. Wait, that's bigger. Let's do 6 and 3. There we go. So if we have negative 1/3 times 6 is less than negative 1/3 times 3. So this ends up becoming, when we cancel this out and cancel that out, this becomes negative 2 is less than less than or equal to negative 1. And that checks. We did it. There you have it. So we checked it out. We put a 6 and a 3 in there. So just in case you didn't catch that, the negative 1/3 times 6 over 1 is negative 6 over 3. So that's how I got the negative 2. And then negative 1/3 times 3 over 1 is just negative 1. All right. So there you have it. Negative 2 is less than or equal to negative 1. So when we multiply or divide by that negative, we flip the sign. Okay, now you should be able to do your exercises for 11.2. Have a wonderful day, and remember the oranges. Oh, and my favorite blocks.